The movie opens in a dense forest in Southeast Asia, where several workers are busy chopping down trees. Suddenly, a logger driving a truck notices a mysterious figure in the distance. But he doesn't give it much thought and continues his work. Moments later, we see his colleague seemingly attacked by something, and the logger notices this and steps out of his truck with an axe. He calls out for his coworker, and to his shock, he stumbles upon his colleague's bloodied helmet and mutilated finger. Horrified, the logger begins running away in the opposite direction to escape from the attacker. He soon falls into a deadly pit, but he manages to crawl out with great effort. He then starts running again, but unfortunately gets caught in a vine trap, hanging upside down. Then, he's approached by a mystery man who finishes him with an axe. The scene then cuts to a resort not far away, where two married couples are on vacation. The first couple is Ritchie and Jasmine, and the other is Ajay and Maya. While eating breakfast, Ritchie invites Ajay to a kayaking trip down the river, while the girls go shopping tomorrow. But Jasmine feels offended that the girls can't be adventurous and says they'll come along as well. Next, Ritchie announces that he has sold his company today and wants to celebrate. He declares that he will pay for everything on this trip, including the other couple's expenses. Maya is excited by this and thanks him, but Ajay doesn't seem too happy. Later, in her room, an annoyed Ajay asks Maya why Ritchie should pay for their trip and whether he thinks they can't afford it. Maya comforts him, reminding him that he and Ritchie have been best friends since school and that it's not a big deal. But Ajay is still upset that Ritchie never involved him when he first started the company, despite them being so close. We then learn that Ajay works at Maya's father's company, but he's not happy about it, because everyone knows he only got the job because of his wife. The next day, the group prepares for their kayaking trip and meets their guide. The man introduces himself as Nick and hands out life jackets to everyone for safety. Ritchie then taunts Ajay that this trip is a bit expensive but asks him not to worry, as he'll cover everything. Next, each couple sits on a kayak, and Nick the guide teaches them how to handle the boat and paddle. After boating for a while, Nick suggests that they can stay overnight in the area and return to the resort tomorrow. The group agrees, and Nick requests their phones, which he will store in a waterproof bag to avoid damage from the water. Everyone complies, but Ajay claims that he has work to attend and refuses to hand over his phone. Following this, the group continues kayaking, and Nick reveals that his dad, granddad, and great-granddad were all guides in the area. He explains that his great-grandpa was the first to arrive here but disappeared after discovering an indigenous tribe. Sometime later, his belongings were found, along with human feces that contained human bones. This implies that the tribe are cannibals, but Nick assures them that their territory is far away and restricted. The girls are scared upon hearing this, but the men think it's just a made-up story. In another scene, a biker couple arrives right outside the restricted area. They do a quick vlog, mentioning that although the sign says "Do not enter," they are going in anyway. The video gets 30,000 views, which makes them really excited. The couple then speeds off into the woods, ignoring the signs and dangers ahead. Soon, the man is stabbed in his throat by someone. His girlfriend is also struck by something and falls off the bike. She then looks for her boyfriend, only to find that his head has been cut off. Returning to the kayaking group, Ajay and Ritchie are childishly splashing water at each other. But then, Ajay accidentally throws a python into Ritchie's boat, prompting the couple to jump into the water. Ajay bursts out laughing at this and starts recording Ritchie to make fun of him, right when he falls into the river. In another scene, the scared biker woman limps through the woods until she reaches a huge cave. She enters inside and notices bloodstains on the walls. Panicked, the woman takes out her phone, right when we see a tribesman behind her. She then starts recording a video to explain her dire situation to her viewers, right before the tribesman throws her boyfriend's bloody head at her. She too is brutally killed, and we see the tribesman holding her head afterward. Elsewhere, the group arrives at the shore, where they decide to camp for the night. Ajay is frustrated that his phone isn't working, as it fell into the river previously, and that he can't attend his work stuff. Soon, it begins to get dark, and Nick and Maya begin chatting by the bonfire. He shows her a picture of his great-grandpa, who vanished in this forest. Nick also tells her about a guy from the logging company who was kidnapped and tortured by the tribal people. Nick reveals how the logger was taken to a cave and kept alive instead of being killed right away. It turns out these tribespeople lack refrigeration, so they gradually cut their victims to prevent the meat from rotting. Moreover, the logger managed to escape the cave and cross the river, despite having his heels cut all the way through. When he was found, he was screaming about being chased by flesh-eating children. Just then, Ajay shows up and becomes jealous seeing them together. He thinks Nick's story is all made up and urges Maya to go to sleep. Around midnight, Jasmine awakens and goes to the woods just next to the camp to relieve herself. But Ajay soon approaches to hug her, as it turns out the two are having a secret affair. Jasmine then suggests that they reveal the truth to their relationships. However, Ajay refuses, stating that Maya's dad is about to retire, so he must wait until then to take his place at the company. But this enrages Jasmine, as it dawns on her that Ajay is just stringing her along and will never leave his wife. The two begin arguing, after which Jasmine heads deeper into the woods to clear her mind. Meanwhile, Ajay returns to the camp, where we notice that both Ritchie and Maya have been awake the entire time. The next morning, when everyone wakes up, they surprisingly discover that Ritchie is nowhere to be found. It turns out he even took Nick's kayak, which contained all of their phones. Worried, they board the remaining 2 kayaks and head out to find him. The group eventually arrives at the point in the river that leads to the forbidden area. Nick strongly advises them not to go any further and suggests that they return to their jeep and have the authorities look for Ritchie instead. However, the others refuse to go without Ritchie, and Ajay keeps saying all those cannibal tribe stories are nonsense. This leaves Nick with no option but to agree. The group then enters the forbidden area, where they soon discover an empty kayak, along with a life jacket, but Ritchie is nowhere to be found. The 3 decide to search for him, while Nick stays behind at the shore. He claims that if they do not return within an hour, he will leave the place alone. The others agree and head deep into the forest in search of Ritchie. Not long after, Nick begins to hear noises in the distance. He thus takes out his knife and heads into the woods to investigate. To his horror, he soon discovers several dressed scarecrows, as well as a tree decorated with accessories of the victims. He also discovers a hat which he claimed belonged to his great-grandpas. However, he notices a tribesman in camouflage nearby. The terrified guide immediately runs for his life, being pursued by the tribesman. He eventually reaches the kayak, and everything goes silent for a while. Nick assumes the attacker is gone. But then all of a sudden, a tribesman lashes out off the water and slices his throat. Meanwhile, the trio eventually arrives at the cave where the biker woman was attacked earlier. They discover the empty bloodied helmet there, right when Ritchie shows up out of nowhere while laughing. He apologizes and says he left the camp because he couldn't sleep. And so, they ask him about the bag containing the phones, but he claims he didn't take them. While heading back to the kayak, Ajay asks Ritchie if everything is okay and why he disappeared like that. In response, Ritchie suddenly accuses him of being jealous of his success. He claims that Ajay married a beautiful girl like Maya and got a job without any hard work, but it's still not enough for him. Ritchie then hands Ajay his phone, claiming that it is now working. This makes Ajay realize that Ritchie must have checked his phone and is now aware of his affair. When they return to the shore, they find Nick missing along with his kayak. They think he abandoned them, but find his knife on the ground. The group then boards the remaining 2 kayaks and decides to leave on their own. However, after a while of sailing, they come across Nick's kayak on a shore and wonder if he's still nearby. The others notice a pot in the distance and proceed to investigate. But then, they come across the horrific sight of Nick's head boiling inside the pot, which scares the life out of them. The group now realizes that the guide was right about the cannibals and immediately returns to their kayaks. They begin sailing away, unaware that a tribesman is keeping an eye on them. Soon enough, the man emerges from the water and immediately attacks Ajay. The others rush to help him, and Maya hits the savage with a big rock. Ajay fatally injures him by stabbing him with Nick's knife. Meanwhile, another tribesman watches everything from a distance but doesn't intervene. The group then notices that the currents have taken away their kayaks, so they rush to find them. Afterward, the tribesman who had been watching everything approaches his friend, who is on the verge of death. He drives an axe into his chest and ends his suffering. He then rips out his friend's heart and begins to eat it while vowing revenge. Meanwhile, the group realizes that they have lost sight of the river along with their kayaks. But it soon begins to get dark, and they have no choice but to rest for the night. They decide to keep watch one by one and intend to move only when morning arrives. Later that night, Ritchie keeps the first watch, and Maya approaches him for a conversation. He then shares with her that Jasmine is finally pregnant after trying for 3 years. But the sad thing is, he did some tests and found out the baby isn't his. Regardless, Ritchie states that he loves his wife and has decided to stay with her. After some time, Ajay takes his turn on watch and is bothered by mosquitoes. He thus grabs some mud and puts it all over his body. Meanwhile, in the distance, we see the tribesmen from earlier lurking around, waiting for a chance to attack. Ajay lies down, immersing himself in the mud. Soon, the tribesman coincidentally passes by but doesn't notice him. Ajay takes advantage of this and attacks the man with a knife. However, the tribesman is too strong and easily knocks Ajay out with an axe. Luckily, Ritchie shows up and attacks him from behind, while an unconscious Ajay slips and falls to the bottom of a crevice. Sometime later, Ajay awakens and notices a group of tribespeople, who have tied up Ritchie and intend to eat him. While they are distracted, Ajay sneakily crawls through the bushes and approaches his friend. Ritchie pleads for help, but Ajay regretfully responds that he's in no position to help him. He promises to save the girls and runs away, even though Ritchie begs him not to go. Soon after, the tribespeople gather around Ritchie and perform a bizarre ritual in which they cut his heel. But then, they unexpectedly release him, and one of the elders touches his blood and makes a young boy smell it. An injured Ritchie limps through the forest and desperately tries to find his way out. But he becomes lost and notices tribespeople cornering him from all sides. He soon comes across the young boy from earlier and pleads for his help, but the boy pushes him, causing a stake to drive through his heart. The next morning, when the girls wake up, they find Ajay covered in blood, and Ritchie is nowhere to be seen. Ajay simply lies and claims that Ritchie went ahead to find the jeep. Soon after, the three of them manage to find their way to the river, but they freak out when they notice a tribesman following them. They thus run off into the woods again and desperately try to evade the attackers. But unfortunately, Jasmine stumbles across a trap, where a sharp stake pierces her shoulder. She begins to cry out in pain, so Maya urges Ajay to put a vine around her. Maya then carefully descends into the hole to help her friend. Seeing her kindness, Jasmine frantically apologizes to Maya for betraying her, but the latter calms her down, reassuring her that she knows everything. Maya then uses a knife to carefully remove Jasmine's stake. Then, Ajay pulls both women out of the hole, and they continue on their journey, despite their injuries and weakness. After some time, the trio finally manages to make their way back to the river, where they come across one of their kayaks. This brings them some relief, but as there is no paddle, they struggle to move forward rapidly. After a while, the girls are asleep, and Ajay unexpectedly gets out of the kayak and heads back into the forest. He then makes a video on his phone about their situation and how the cannibals are after them. He leaves his phone at the branch of a tree and plays the video at high volume. This soon attracts the attention of a tribesman, who finds the phone and gets curious. Ajay takes this chance to attack him from behind, but unfortunately, the guy is too strong. He has no mercy and tortures Ajay by burying his face in the mud and suffocating him. He then starts beating the poor guy with an axe, which leaves him badly weakened. In the end, the tribesman ties a vine around Ajay's neck and leaves him hanging from a tree. He also notices the two women passing by in a kayak and prepares to attack them. But Ajay discovers a knife embedded in the tree, and he finally cuts himself free before throwing the knife at the tribesman. Ajay then attacks the guy, who was trying to hurt the women, who are now awake. The two men engage in an intense and bloody fight, while the women take this chance to escape in the kayak. It seems like it's all over for Ajay, but he soon gets a hold of the tribesman's weapon and uses it to brutally mutilate the man's head and end his life for good. Soon enough, Ajay swims for a while and manages to reach the kayak again. But when he's about to climb up, he notices several tribespeople have gathered. Maya urges him to get in the kayak, but Ajay recalls his memories with Ritchie and feels guilty that he abandoned his best friend to die. He thus decides to take his revenge and heads back to the forest once again, although Maya pleads with him not to go. Ajay furiously approaches the tribespeople and begins attacking them with the axe. However, the savages eventually overpower him and kill him. In the final scene, Jasmine and Maya reach a shore, from where they climb a huge cliff. After the struggle, they finally manage to get out of the forest. They soon come across some local people who give them a ride back to the city. Maya and Jasmine escape, but their scars, both seen and unseen, will never fade. Survival came at a cost. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Stay safe.